Hold on one moment. Okay, yep, she's got it. Okay. We are on.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the Thursday, February 22nd MBTA Subcommittee meeting to order. On the agenda, we have first up is update on scope of services, which I believe is regarding the consultant, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
So we were awarded the grant, and so at the last meeting, we were going to develop a scope of services. Judy is in the process of doing that. She's been on vacation this week, so we should have something in place by the next meeting. I was hoping to have it now, but she's away this week. And then she did indicate that we definitely could be part of the second round of grants if we needed additional funding. So once we get this one secured, we can put in for another one. So I'll actively pursue that.
Excellent. And it's still, the plan is still to have her come to the meeting at some point to
Yes.
kind of discuss what the best approach is.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. I don't know if anybody has any questions regarding consulting.
I think it's the way to go.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And it sounds like Judy Barrett's the one we're gonna go with.
It's gonna be a combination of the three people within her department. They have one person, Sarah, that's in charge of like just the educational component
Yep.
to the community, and then Judy and Sarah will do the modeling, and then there's also, I believe his name is Will. He'll do the compliance modeling within all of the structures of that compliance model that we have to meet for basically the zoning bylaw. So we'll be working with the three of them.
Okay,
Mhm.
awesome. Yeah, that's really good to hear. Cool. All right, so moving on. Next is discussion on how to create an outline to meet the compliance, the requirements of the law. That one's kind of ongoing. So probably, and that encompasses all of our discussions as these meetings go forth. So I know Representative Sawyer, I don't know, I know you had, or you said you had an update, so.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, if I could.
Sure.
So I know that this is it's been a tenuous, thing and situation, and I think is it okay if I go?
Sure, absolutely.
There's, obviously, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of misconception out there of, that the MBTA zoning is already here in Bellingham. It's not. The Board of Selectmen did, send a letter to the executive branch, the governor, which myself and Senator Roush were, copied on, asking for an exemption. When this MBTA zoning was, part of the economic development package, I don't think the intention was ever to threaten communities, but more so work with communities on trying to create zoning in a way that helps the housing market. I kind of wanna, if there's public watching, and then for the edification of the community, and because I hear some of the things that are out there, and I was on the Economic Development Committee, so I hear some of it, and I know some of it. I don't agree with 100% of it, and with any bill up there, sometimes you have to pick and choose, but I can say that it wasn't designed to do what's kind of going on in Milton right now, and a lot of the animosity that you see in the communities. For Bellingham, there's one thing that you have to realize, that the MBTA community wouldn't be used to build any more affordable housing. Okay, because they don't have to. You've already reached that number with the Curtis Apartments. So now you don't have to allow 40B zoning to, put a lot of units in a small area, like where it's utilized, and it's utilized in most communities. The MBTA zoning was designed to create units that are market conditioned, which doesn't mean that you can't, as a committee, present a solution or recommendations to say, we can zone this particular area for 750 units. Doesn't mean you have to build all 700. There's no date on the 750 units. It just has to be available, and it could be multiple lots to get to that 750. It doesn't necessarily have to be next to an MBTA. You could be part of an MBTA community, but you could build it, in another part of town that's even further away from the MBTA, which I don't know necessarily if that was a purpose of this law initially. But you don't necessarily, you could build, there are towns that are building creating an atmosphere of, say, for like sections of development in that 750 that are over 55, for example. It could be 1,200 square feet, maybe even a little bit smaller, one-bedroom unit, somebody might want to sell, but they have a lot of assets that they sold their house. They don't necessarily afford, they don't qualify for 40B, or they don't qualify for affordable housing. You can create a market condition situation for them where something like that might be, won't be what the Curtis is, even affordable is 2,700. Maybe the market condition for that house would be 2,100, 1,900. It all depends on what it is. So the MBTA was created not to speed up affordable housing in any way. It was a way to build market condition housing in smaller dense areas, instead of taking over larger swaths of land and building multiple housing or big housing units. You can have housing, you can have townhomes, you can have apartments, you can do what I said, you can take some of it and create over 55. MBTA allows you to do a mixed use. So if you did do something in a certain area and you had small little cafes and shops and things like that underneath with apartments, that also can be part of that particular zone. So it's building a community. Plymouth is one of those communities that are tending to use the MBTA to their advantage because they are, they have a lot of housing growth. And they're recreating their whole atmosphere. So there are some communities that are using it. What's going on in Milton, you had the town meeting turn it down and then obviously the voters. I don't agree with what the governor and how the governor is doing, especially in the climate that we're in today. I don't agree with how she's kind of using a heavy hand because that was never the intention of the grant inclusion, that you couldn't, if you didn't accept this, you would lose your grants. And potentially you could. And you could lose your grant money. And those grant monies between, works grants, water infrastructure grants, all those things are on the line. It also affects, I've had meetings with MAPC. It also affects things that they're doing because everything they're doing could tie into other things and grants and things like that too. So we're pushing it. We're asking, we haven't had an update from the selectmen letter to what they'll do with that. But if you look at the tone that she's taken with Milton, my guess is she's not going to answer a letter. So I guess it would be up to the town on how they want to proceed. But, we'll help out in any way we can, as far as what the town decides they want to do. So but it is a struggle for us as legislators it's going to be tougher, and her folks have made it very clear it's going to be very tough for us to get qualified for grants, and that includes everything. It doesn't include just road infrastructure.
And pass the gentleman on the table over there,
What's that?
public safety.
Oh, yeah, it includes everything that is grants tied into grants. So that's how she's utilizing it. Now, whether I don't agree with that, because again, that wasn't the intention of the law. Intention of the law was to work with the communities to help develop I think you're in a unique situation. You have some projects here that you could expand and look into and do things and try to create this. You've got some projects that are going on. And I think if you guys, if you are presenting a plan, I've seen towns that are presenting plans, doing committees like you have, presenting plans and going to the town meeting to say, we're going to zone this. This is the plan. This is the people, the developer that owns the land. This is what it would look like at its max. And this was what the zoning would be, and then let the people decide. If they decide they don't want it, they don't want it. You move on, you presented a plan, you did it. But I think, it's what she's doing to Milton is not good. It's not a very good precedent, especially in this time when everybody's grasping for funding. Our revenues are down. Dennis and I, Dennis just walked in, we had our meeting, our budget meeting. It's a very difficult situation when she's dangling all this stuff over our head. It's not easy. So, but I want to make sure that everybody's aware of that is not here now. There is no zoning here for it now. There's no project in front of the planning board that has that. And there's a lot of misconception out there that development that is happening is under this program. It's not. You haven't put a plan. together. You did, I believe you got some time to put a plan together.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So you did get some time to put a plan together and they're working with you, but she's not, you know, Dennis, you didn't hear when I came in, but she's not responding to the letter and and you can tell she's probably not going to. So I know Holden did a lawsuit. Their premise of their lawsuit was, we looked into it today a little bit. Premise of their lawsuit was, yes, they are an abutting community, but how far they really are from the T. There's only one T stop in Worcester. It's not like they have multiple T stops in Holden. You literally have to take busing to get to it. So it really defeats the purpose. So I think some of these communities and some of the aspect of it, I think Holden kind of is probably she'll probably have to budge on that one, if I had to guess. But we'll see what happens. She's kind of drawing the line in the sand though. I don't know. She's just gonna let the courts kind of fight this out and let them sue her and go from where she's gonna go. But this isn't migrant housing, this isn't emergency shelter housing, this doesn't include any of that. Now, communities that are not in a unique situation like Bellingham, where they've already meet their 40B requirements, you know, they might have that situation, but here, that situation under this would be purely market condition housing, this is market. Some of these apartments, some of these townhomes are gonna go upwards of, if they're for sale, probably will go upwards of 650, 700 as the market is flooded with more inventory. And then, you know, I mean, I can't even, we're actually looking at just Bellingham alone, the values in Bellingham have gone up. Just in this past year dramatically, we're getting the final numbers now, but over even the last 5 years, the increases in home values here dramatically have increased. The lucky thing is you guys have a split tax rate where a lot of communities don't, so they don't feel the tax pressure as much as you would. Yeah, your taxes go up if you value this, but you're in a very unique situation because of the tax split. And the way you are, you're one of the, if not the lowest, you're one of the lowest in the surrounding areas and throughout the Commonwealth. So good job with, you know, as far as the town doing that. So that I just wanted to come here tonight and just kind of give you where we are. We're ready to move on whatever the town decides to do. She is very serious about and I knew she would be. I think this is one of her solutions. And she's gonna double down on the housing bond bill that's coming out too. So, and the problem is, if I go for infrastructure money in that bond bill, if we're not complying, that money will also not come to us when she releases the bonds. So it's a catch-22 that we're in, and you know, each administration is different. When Governor Baker came and testified, one of my questions to him was, it seems like we're overreaching, and he made it clear that there's a good, great piece of area in there where it gives the Economic Development Secretary the opportunity for exemptions. She's saying, no, there isn't. We're going to utilize this. We want you to build it. We want you to comply. So we'll see if that changes with political pressure. Political pressure is always a good thing. We'll see what happens.
Well, other towns may not pass it. Between now.
I can tell you, I've gotten calls from Lintham. They're gonna be reaching out to Dennis about trying to formulate an alliance to possibly talk about court cases. But that's up to you guys. It's not up to me. When I was sitting in that side, maybe, but not now. It's not my plan, but
Our job is to present something to the town.
yeah, right,
That's
that's
it.
what you gotta do. That's what you gotta do. And you gotta remember, I mean, there are towns that are kind of like zoning areas where they know this is never gonna get built. Yeah, some are
That's
taking,
one avenue you can go down.
yeah,
Yeah.
some people are taking malls, for example, or, you know, shopping areas, and they're zoning it. Because it meets the acreage requirement, they're
Mhm.
zoning it that way, they know it's never gonna get built unless the shopping mall goes under and the town decides, okay, we can do something. But there are towns that are getting a little bit creative so they can comply. All right, we complied, that's our zone. That's what you could do too.
Mike, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
To the board, is anything that we have, without getting into depths of it, projected that we're talking about maybe some development coming in with this constitute any of that? Would anything be covered, or would that cover anything that we're talking
Well,
about?
I did I mean, you are in a unique situation because you do have a developer here that has a plan that finished, but he hasn't put a, that, you could actually come in and he could revamp, like Lavasor could come in and revamp, because there's also one swath of land there. It's a unique situation because this is very close to the MBTA. And one of the grants, I was looking at some of the grants and some of the mitigation that other builders are giving. Some of the things they're doing are they're putting shuttle buses or applying for shuttle buses, so it's less. They can have community, they can have actually some transportation between what they're building here and the shopping malls and things like that. That's up to you guys. It's up to the town. It's up to how you guys want to construct that. You could actually take an existing project that hasn't started something. The challenge here, and I think Dennis and I even talked about the challenge you got on this side of town is the Charles River. Sewer system. However, he can, that doesn't exclude them from building treatment facility either. So if they're getting that kind of density.
The other thing to remember, this isn't a production requirement, it's just a zoning overlay. So we could pick a spot, get it passed, and someone could build to the highest density allowed, someone could build something to the lowest density allowed, they could build what the underlying zoning is instead of housing, so this isn't a requirement for anyone to actually build anything, it's just to help cut through the red tape to incite more housing development.
And I also think if you show you're doing, your committee's doing the due diligence of inviting some of these folks in and putting plans together and showing, I think it makes your case to the state saying, we'll help with that. We'll pressure them to say, look, these guys are doing their due diligence. They're doing what they need to do. Yeah, it's a 700, but they want to have, I was at a meeting at the senior center and the biggest concern there is not everybody can get into affordable housing, like I just mentioned, but because they don't qualify with their retirements and social security and everything else. But they want to be able to sell their homes and they want to go into something a little bit more reasonable. They're not going to go spend $4,000 a month, but they want something more reasonable. Or it's a smaller format townhome or something like that. There's nothing in the law restricting you. You just can't, if it was affordable, you can't pick and choose because affordable's open up how it's opened up and how it gets chosen and slotted, but this isn't gonna be affordable. You've already met your number. You can add and you can have a developer put a component in.
We can add it in, but if we wanted everything market value,
Well, but it would be market value senior living, it would
Yes.
be market value veteran living, it would, veteran is gonna be tough because it really, that's a very fixed income, it comes under the 40B and the 40 housing. Things like that, so, but there's different avenues that you could, and a developer with that much density, and if they do, one of the things you could ask them to build as part of the mitigation is you could ask them to build veteran homes, if they have a veteran housing section, that would be something out of the you can actually ask for that as part of the mitigation if you wanted to, and it would go towards your affordable housing number. So you could, there's little ways of trying to make things happen, but again, it's however you want to do it and whatever you figure out. My biggest concern is there's only so much fighting. We already are fighting for money for the town, and the exemption letter's been kind of holding some things up on that front, but we're saying, well, we're doing our due diligence, so don't penalize us yet because we haven't made a decision, we haven't presented anything yet. So we haven't EA'd or NA'd it, if anyone hasn't shot it down. We're still working on it. You've given us that ability to do that, so there are things that we're trying to get money for and we still want to get money for. But I think it was necessary for me to come tonight because we have been working on it. We saw the letter. We are pushing it. We are advocating for however you want to go. If the town decides to move no on it, that's how we'll advocate, and we'll just keep advocating the best we can. Look, at governors are elected every 4 years, doesn't mean it's going to be the same 4 years from now. So it could be a very small temporary, by the time things are leveled out here, it could be 2 years, before another governor comes in. So anything can change, and the legislature can hear enough of it. Don't think I'm not gonna file legislation next year to change this requirement and put an exemption in this. Now, whether we get it through or not will be another thing. But, I think that as the lawsuits start building up, she's gonna have to explain this unfunded piece of it's technically an unfunded mandate is what's technically happening. But Liz is absolutely right that you don't necessarily, you could zone something that nothing's ever gonna get built. You could zone a Home Depot parking lot and change it if you wanted to. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna get built there.
And once we zone, the owner of the land does not have to agree.
Well, it's an overlay, so it's.
They don't have to utilize the old.
They don't even-
Yeah, right.
They can keep, if I remember correctly, they can keep their original zoning.
The overlay.
Zoning, the overlay would just be
Right.
something they have another option.
Right.
So, but I just wanted to come tonight and I know you guys have got a very big task, a lot of pressure, a lot of eyes on it. And I just want to let you know, we're here to help, a resource, questions, reach out to us. I can set up if the committee wants to, I know you all have a full-time job, but we could set something up, even if it's a Zoom call. We could set up something with, Housing and Urban Development. Have him maybe even come down at Augustus to come down to talk about some of the issues that we have with this, here. And maybe we present all of the growth plans that we've had and all the housing plans that we've had, building and still coming. And maybe him looking at that would go back to the governor and say, you know what, they're doing it already. They were doing it before the MBTA program. So, so we'll throw everything at it that we have, all the tools in the tool shed at it for you to try to make this, look, at the end of the day, I don't want us to lose grant opportunities. We don't. There's big money out there. This bond bill is gonna be huge.
That's what they look out to this.
Yeah, I think we are all pretty much in agreement of that.
This bond
Yeah,
bill
we
is,
are a municipality that takes advantage pretty significantly of the grant program, which I think some of the comments I read about Milton is a lot of the residents felt like they weren't taking advantage of a lot of grants, even though it sounds like maybe they've lost something. So, those that voted no felt confident that, missing out on that grant money was worth not complying, which I feel like most of us here, that's not necessarily where our mindset is at the moment, so, yeah.
just to kind of give you a perspective, I mean, this is under the old price, under the old kind of inflationary pricing, but from the bus barn to the center of town, just that money was $7 million.
Yeah.
If that was gonna be done, probably looking at 10 million now because of inflation. The Hartford Ave potential, one side of it is 12 million. You've got another side of it that is gonna get done, everything's gotta kind of align. So you've got, the interesting thing about Bellingham is 126, we own. And it means we have a highway too that we have to deal with. So, but we own, so it's and I think there's a lot of it that's gotten done over, and we'd love to have the rest of it done over to meet the demands of the growth around us. And it's one of our major roads, and if it was a state road, it wouldn't be such a, and the interesting thing about Milton is a lot of those roads are owned by Mass DOT, especially around the highway and things like that, around 93. So, yeah, I mean, I just, there are things here, we have culverts we want to update. I mean, Dennis and I have been going through this, and this list is huge, and there's millions and millions of dollars of money we need. I mean, we've got, there's the Newland neighborhood where Lazard is, there's a lot of water projects there that need to be done. There's so much needs to be done in this town to just, these culverts were built in early times. They weren't built for the storms that we just had, never mind, so, and we're seeing that more and more every day. So that's my only concern, is I don't want the town doesn't have enough money to bond all this stuff and pay for all this stuff. So, but I also understand the aspect of this, but I think there has to be a real understanding in the community that this isn't, were thrown some information that was not true. And sometimes if you speak out of turn when you don't know what is actually being said, the MBTA community is not going to house this migrant crisis. The two do not have anything to do with each other. None whatsoever. Okay, this is not affordable housing. This is not Section 8 housing. They're looking for any other building that they can find and do. Would they love them to be dispersed out into all these different communities? Absolutely, you do. You have them in you have situations in Franklin and around us. Right now, we don't have that situation, but would we have it? Absolutely.
Well, to speak for myself, I think one of the biggest jobs of the committee over the next several months, many months actually, to November, will be educating the public.
Yeah.
And we plan to do a lot of that.
Yeah, and don't just do it here, folks.
We're doing it.
I
We
would
have an
go
idea.
to every PTO, every group, everywhere you can to educate this community, because each one is interlocked into their own groups. They're not necessarily watching us tonight. Nobody even probably knows this meeting. So I'm lucky, I have an assistant that tells me everything that's going on, so I knew what was going on. But a lot of people don't, and all I can say to you is that education is one of the things that I educating the public on the truth and educating people on what are facts and not fiction is very, very important.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's not selling the project anyway, it's just understanding that, I mean, we can give you a rundown of how many grants this town has received,
We may ask for that.
and you're gonna keep asking for them. So we have it, and the town has it. So,
Okay.
you know, so it's, when you say grants, it's not just grants either, it's other things, MAPC money, a lot of things get kind of pulled into this.
Okay.
So. Any other
Yes.
questions?
I think I'm good. but
I'm fine.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
So-
Yeah, so just email me if you want to set something up. We've had the Secretary of Housing in different, we've had Jay Ash, we've had a few others. We can have that and set that up. We can do it as a Zoom call, because I know all of you have jobs, so we can set that up as a Zoom call too. We could set something up and talk to him about it and see some of the assistance that they can bring, and help with too. That's what they did.
When we set up the public outreach meetings, I think Amy, our consultant, is gonna help with some of that. It would be helpful to get promotion from other people outside of this table, because I think that's part of it. Saying, hey, there's gonna be something at the library or the senior center, just make sure you're going. I think that goes a long way in terms of the public outreach.
Right,
As
absolutely,
well as the schools
absolutely.
and the seniors, on the public housing we have in town, right, the Meadow Depot Court.
Yep.
Make sure they're aware.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate
Have a
it.
great evening, everybody.
All right.
We have Jesse,
Yeah, I think, so next on the agenda, the big item on the agenda tonight, DPW fire and police input, which I think I see Jesse on Zoom.
Yes, that is correct.
Good evening, Jesse. How are you?
and Jesse provided everybody with, you should have it in your packet with just some information that he provided in regards to, his department.
Yeah, I saw the email you sent, Jesse. Thank you, because this had a lot of really useful information in it. I think it was kind of really exactly what we were looking for. I don't know if everyone had a chance to read it.
I had time to look at it.
Yeah, I guess for the public's knowledge, anybody watching or will be watching the recording later, would you mind just giving like a quick summary of kind of what you submitted regarding the water usage or water demand, I should say, and I believe the other was sewer and roads.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, good evening, everybody. Jesse Rattle here with the Bellingham DPW. As we would provide comments for any project, scale, especially to this magnitude, we've got infrastructure concerns as far as what's existing and what's allowable for current usage and things of that nature. But first and foremost, the first thing that came to our attention was, the impact on the water infrastructure with 750 additional units and where we're at currently with capacity. This may trigger additional items for reconsideration as far as what we're permitted at this point in time. We have been over the last handful of years been exceeding our current permitted amounts, our allotments, if you will. And adding an additional 750 potential units would be the first item of concern from the infrastructure standpoint. Again, it's something that we could go back and, have these figures refined potentially, but at this point in time, to just add those units, it's only going to further strain the amount of usable capacity that we have. And this is not just drinking water supply, but it also goes towards our fire protection as well. So especially in our high demand season, summer months, things of that nature, we have to, not only supply adequate pressure and volume to our residents for drinking water supply, but we have to maintain within our standpipes as well. So there's a difference between what we're able to pull from the ground. We are exploring additional sources to increase the amount of water that we can achieve, especially in the drought times. But what we're permitted at this point in time is going to be prohibitive, especially with this number of units proposed. So that was our concern on the water side of things. And as far as sewer, to briefly explain the way Bellingham is structured, our sewer, we don't treat in-house in Bellingham. We send to one of two locations. The north side of town primarily goes to the Charles River Pollution Control District, or CRPCD. And we're currently at about 95% of the allotted capacity at this site. We have potential to add, a very limited amount of additional sewer users to this 95% capacity, but certainly not 750 units. On our southern side of town, the sewage flows into the Woonsocket wastewater treatment facility. That area would require some additional research to see. Their figures aren't as polished as the Charles River Pollution Control District. Further research would be needed to hone in on exactly what's still available on that side of town. Obviously, other treatment techniques would be available if this is something that it does come down the pipeline as far as in-house treatments. And other techniques for sewage treatment. So just things to consider as far as where we're at for capacity on the Charles River side of town, and where we currently stand with the Woonsocket wastewater treatment facility as well. Roadway infrastructure, always a concern, obviously with the increased traffic flow, things to consider, how is that traffic going to be analyzed, what is going to be the impact on Bellingham's existing roadway infrastructure, and how we want to incorporate any sort of traffic lights, pedestrian access, roadway improvements, things of that nature. So just items of concern. Obviously, it's still very early on, but things that we do want to consider and how this will impact the residents of Bellingham.
Excellent. Thank you for the summary. This is really helpful, Jesse. Anybody on the board have any specific questions for Jesse?
Yeah, I do.
All right.
I'd like to look at two of your paragraphs. First page, last paragraph, last sentence. The addition of a highly populated development, 750 units with either two bases required, would further tax Bellingham sources, increase withdrawal, and subsequent extendancies. So that means we're going to be greatly impacted. Also under sewer, you indicate right now, up north, we do not have the capacity for 750 additional units. Is that a
Correct.
fair assessment?
Yes, that is
Those are
correct.
two big sentences in your document.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And it sounds like we may potentially be at capacity to the southern end of town potentially, or do you think that there's a little bit more flux on the south side?
Yeah, so a little bit more time for research on the south side of town is necessary. So we are allotted 1.3 MGD, million gallons per day on the south side of town. We may be able to achieve that with current figures. However, I would want to do some further research as far as I&I, what's been found at this point, and whether or not these figures are still accurate. The documentation that I have on this it's a little older. I'd like to just refine this a little bit further before I draw a hard determination on where we're at. But projections off of what we have at this point in time show that we may be able to accommodate, factoring about 250 gallons per day per unit times 750. But we would be right at that max capacity line at that point in time.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Just one question. So what happens when we do reach capacity? What are the implications? We have to find alternative treatments and other avenues to function for water and sewer?
Yep, that's absolutely correct. So the capacity on the sewer side of things would alternatively come down to some sort of a package treatment facility. We've actually had private locations in Bellingham that have had on-site sewer treatment. Obviously, there's a benefit to having municipal sewer. We address the maintenance and upkeep of those types of facilities if residences tied into town sewer. So there is a benefit to not having the maintenance and upkeep of a privately owned sewer station. But something like this, we may have on-site localized treatment for the sewage that's generated from this site. And as far as the water concern, so again, we are still exploring additional sources here in Bellingham. We hope to increase what we're able to pull from the ground. It's more for redundancy as opposed to additional withdrawal. For example, if a well site were to have mechanical failure, we would have the ability to use the supplemental site to get back to where our permitted amounts are. However, based on the information from 2017 through 2022, with a max allotment, it actually spells it out on the graph. They increased the allotted amounts slightly after 2018, I believe, but we've exceeded every year aside from 2021. So again, adding an additional 750 units, the concern would be obviously that would put us over, but how we address that, it's essentially going to tax these basins harder. And the result is any community that's downstream of these water basins would have less potential for usage in their system. So it's more so how it impacts our downstream neighbors.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Asked a question, maybe a comment. So when we exceed our total maximum allowable within a given year or a given day, just so the public knows, that's irregardless of weather. We're only allowed to pump so much. And that's why we may have bans, correct?
That's absolutely correct. And to kind of highlight an annual occurrence that Bellingham residents have probably experienced some frustrations or uncertainty as to why it comes out. Part of our permit, we are actually required on an annual basis to issue a water use restriction. Sometimes it may be very obvious with the timing. We've been in drought years where this has come up at the perfect time, and it makes perfect sense. Last year, for example, we had a very wet season when the annual permit or the annual restriction went out. I believe we were, right in the middle of a rain event, and it looking at the weather, it didn't make sense, but it's not driven by the weather. What we use, what we restrict is not driven by the weather. It's actually restricted. It's driven by our permit restrictions. So as a result of these exceedances, what we're looking at this current day and time is how we further reduce the amount of water that we're pumping from the ground. And this may trigger, this may cause the need for additional restrictions or other means and methods on conserving water or incentivizing the conservation of water. But we're exploring options at this point in time. And again, we're at that threshold now with exceedances, and adding an additional 750 units will only make the problem that much worse.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
You're
I got a question, Jesse. I always come up with some kind of questions while my wheels are turning over here. So while we're talking about the water and sewer here, and obviously 750 units we talking about, and also for the public knowledge, and when we compare the residential housing versus everybody always asking about question, the warehouses, how much impact they do our water and sewer system as well as our infrastructure. When you compare that, this kind of size, and how can you compare that? So which one is actually going to impact it more when you compare them both side by side?
And Sahan, that's a great question. The warehouses, the impact that they have is a drop in the bucket compared to what we're talking with 750 household units. It's not even close to the amount of water warehouses use comparatively speaking to these units. And we have a standard figure when it comes down to the sewer capacity that we apply. It's based off of Title V figures. So we're assigning 250 gallons per day, whereas a warehouse, they don't incorporate things like, showering or food for or water for cooking or drinking, things like that. There is to some degree, but it's not nearly what a family would use in each of these individual units.
And also basically on the other hand, so when we have this kind of projects, when we're looking into it, I'm just, as I said, I know kind of going on a little conversation here, just for the public knowledge. And so it doesn't impact for our fire as well as police and as well as our school system too, right? When you compare them?
So, and with the fire, the water mains, the infrastructure, the hydrants, things of that nature, they're installed, but generally speaking, unless we're flowing for testing or if there is a fire, the fire protection system uses essentially no water. So as far as taxing what we're pulling from the ground, it has very minimal impact compared to what residents would be using with 750 units.
Thank you, Jesse.
And I think just a statement too, the 250 gallons per day that you're using to estimate, that's more in line with a 2-bedroom unit, which I know these are by right, they could be 3-bedroom, which would be more. It's like 350 gallons, I believe, so that could be even more problematic, so.
Yeah, and going back to the potential for usage on the south side of town where we feed to the Woonsocket treatment plants, those are things that we would want to consider. If we're reaching that capacity based off the 250 gallons, and there's potential, we may want to either do a mixed or an average between the two, and that may put us over what we're allotted on that side of town as well. So just things to consider when we make that final determination, if that final determination.
Absolutely. Excellent.
I think we're good.
Good. All right. Thanks, Jess. You really
Thank you,
appreciate the input. This is very helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, on to the next. Should we do police next?
Here in
Yeah.
person.
In person. All right.
We have the chief.
Oh, and the chief is on Zoom. Okay. So, yeah, I guess if police have any input, I know, we're really looking for, well, I guess as far as input goes, obviously I am no expert in law enforcement. I don't know if anybody up here is going to claim to be experts either. So really, I guess the question is, Chief, if there's areas in town that you would be concerned with seeing, a large spike in housing for, I don't know, response times and such, or if there's any considerations that you feel that the subcommittee should look at as we move forward with this. That's kind of a loaded question. I'm sure there's many, many things we should be looking at, but anyway.
Yeah, so can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
I hear you.
Okay, so Sergeant Padula is there as our safety officer. He can speak a little better to the his concerns about traffic safety, pedestrian safety, that sort of thing. Just real like a high level, 750 units in a compact space generally suggests to me they're going to build up, going to build high, going to build taller buildings. So both the previous departments I worked for during my time there, we saw 10, 12, 14-story apartment buildings being built. Whether it's apartments, condos, whatever, building up, it's just a different type of policing than what we do today in Bellingham. So, and 750 units, I mean, really, you're talking probably two people, maybe could even be 3 or 4 per unit. So you could, take the population, add 15, 1,800, 2,000 people to it. So, is it going to cause me to come to a board at some point, look for more staff? Yes. Dispatchers, yes, all that, because that population will potentially put a burden, but the vertical policing, the more urban style policing, it's an issue too. And Chief Miller can speak to it on the fire side of it, but it's definitely a response time issue, no matter what. If you call 911 from your single family residential 1 or 2 story house, we drive there, pull up, walk inside. If you call from the 10th floor, we drive there. We have to figure out how to get in the building. Does the key work? Does the key code work? Is the elevator working? Is there somebody moving furniture in the elevator? Do we have to go up 10 flights of stairs? So it's just a totally different type of policing, and calls in those buildings take longer because you're not pulling into somebody's driveway or pulling up in front of somebody's multifamily and walking in the front door and maybe going up a flight of stairs or walking right into the house and dealing with whatever there is. You're potentially going in and up and down and around. So it's a different type of policing than what we've experienced here. It's a different type of firefighting. It's a different type of EMS. It's different. And it can be a burden. So that's my take on it. It's going to be a change, and it will, when you have that many units, that much housing in a clustered environment like that, it's absolutely going to drive calls for service up, whether it's, just basic people having issues, reports that need to be taken, theft, things like that, to domestic issues, to people calling 911 by accident. Happens every day, and when you cluster that many people close together, it's going to happen more. But Sergeant Padula can speak more towards our other thoughts in terms of where this is actually put, because we talk in a lot of vehicles and potential impact on traffic. So I'll leave that part for him.
Can I ask a quick question? And you might not know the answer, but when the Curtis Apartments went in, which I feel is more mid-rise garden style, not high rise, did we see an uptick in response times and, calls going to the complex and slower response times, even
So
in a
that
4-story
project was
building?
that project was finished, or what's there now has been there for the 8 or 9 months I've been here. What I can tell you is we go there regularly, just because there's, again, a large concentration of people in a small place. I can tell you that I have my police radio on in the background here, and they were there earlier for somebody in crisis, and they were on the top floor. And so that takes time to get in, time to get there, time for the backup to get there. The ambulance came from out of town. Somebody had to get them in the building, get them there. So again, it's and that's a smaller, lower garden style. When you talk this number of units, I think of the 10 and 12 story, kind of corporate apartment size buildings, the big ones that seem to be popping up a lot. It seemed to be what might fit the parameters, because 50 acres isn't a lot. So, the higher you go, it's a different type of public safety draw. But we go to the Curtis pretty regularly because there's a lot of people there, and it can be a challenge just from getting in the front door. And this is any apartment complex, not they've done nothing wrong. But they have a locked door. Just getting through that and then leaving it open for the next person, and getting up to somebody's unit and finding the unit, it takes time. So it's going to be a change.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Yes, so, it's like the chief said, it's difficult to speculate until there's a proposed location. But we have some, perennial concerns that we always have, basically, the suitability of the roadway to accommodate the additional cars. It could be in excess of 1,500 additional cars, commuters on the road. Like the chief touched on, the method of entry is always tricky. Is it going to be a key card access, a fob, traditional lock sets? Because those things take time. The chief wasn't here, but the Charles, that is a consideration. You're absolutely right. Trying to get in the front door, sometimes our fobs wouldn't work. They have a backup code. The code takes time for the officers to access, even a common vestibule. What's that? I said no elevators. And no elevators. So if you do have somebody in crisis, or you do have somebody that maybe isn't a medical crisis, and it's more, an arrest situation, you can picture that coming down multiple flights of stairs with officers. It's not the most ideal of situations. Other things we look for, consideration for offsite improvements, signalization, turning lanes, sidewalks, things of that nature to accommodate that traffic again. Like the chief already touched on, but we're always concerned about the substantial impact of additional calls to service and how that would tax our existing system. So basically just the same concerns that we always have, but at an elevated potential for issues. As the chief said, it could be a multi-story unit, much more than we have now. So it's, the calls to service are going to take more time, and the traffic impacts will speak for themselves. So it's going to have to be a suitable roadway. So like I said, I don't know, this is kind of our first turn at it. I don't know if there has been proposed areas
Not yet, no, we wanted to.
with overlay, but we'd certainly be concerned when that overlay is placed on an area to see if that's a roadway and the feasibility of that roadway to handle the additional traffic.
As we get more refined in this process, and we identify hypothetically 1, 2, or 3 areas, can we come back to you and get Carter?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we're here tonight. We gained, insight, just in the process that we've been here, but there's a lot of moving parts, obviously, as you all know, and we'd love to, have a seat at the table when it does come,
Okay,
that we refine the site, so we can maybe speculate a little further on it.
that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's great. So. Any other questions?
No.
No? You're good? All right.
Thanks, chief. That's what you put.
Thank you.
Oh, I think we got one
Do you mind if I
question.
ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Our police chief mentioned, the concern associated with high-rise buildings. Can someone on the committee speak to what is in place to prevent high-rise buildings, or what could be put in place to prevent high-rise buildings?
So that's a good question, because that's actually, it was something that was kind of briefly discussed not so long ago. I think it was our second meeting. We're gonna need a little bit more information on exactly what we as the committee can do as far as zoning and dimensional requirements, because so my understanding for any overlay is that if there's no dimensional regulations for the overlay itself, usually you're held to whatever dimensional regulations are required on the existing zoning that the overlay is upon. It sounds like there might be a little bit more to it for this, because this is by right. I don't think that the state would be willing to mandate this and say there are no dimensional requirements, because that would essentially say you can build anything you want, as high as you want, as close to the property line as you want. There's a lot of requirements that are in place as far as setbacks and height requirements. So I would be very interested, I guess, to answer your question, I don't have an answer for you yet, but we will have an answer regarding
Right.
what we can do to basically mandate where this goes and what dimensional requirements can be placed on the overlay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, so the law is, my understanding, the way it's written, you can take your existing bylaws that you have for height requirements, add it into the overall zoning requirement. And you also can follow your current bylaws when it comes to that. And you can also create a blueprint, or you can also create a plan for how you want those 750 units. If it's one section, say, for example, when it's on a 20-acre lot or 30-acre lot, wherever, whatever you designate for that area, You don't have to put a high rise. Doesn't have to be, it could be 3 floors, it can stay within the bylaws. So there's nothing in that law that restricts you or changes, you can add your existing bylaws into that zoning. And not required
And I,
for dimensional.
You know what's interesting about that, because I'm reading the letter from the Attorney General's office, and that in this letter, it says, it gives examples, but it does say, for example, the zoning district cannot have limits on the size of the units or caps on the number of bedrooms or occupants. So that's an interesting sentence there, so I do think we would need to get clarification, because this is straight from the Attorney General's office that we were given, and so, I would want to make sure we know that,
yeah, we need more
From-
information.
because these letters are very specific, and I think we could get clarity though from others who have done this.
Yeah.
And I think also that language was written if you didn't have a particular bylaw that restrict dimensional also.
Right,
So if you're, say some towns don't even have that.
Right.
And they're bringing this in as their zoning.
right.
And then their zoning, then that changes.
Right.
Changes.
And I think that's gonna be great when we have our consultant, because we can at that point have those 2 or 3 options, put it within our compliance model with what we have
Absolutely.
currently within our zoning districts, and they'll be able to say, this works, this doesn't work. And that's why it's huge that we get this consultant on right away to put this in that compliance model. To
Also,
meet the
also take a
requirements.
look at what other towns have
That's
already
right.
put forward
That's right,
and gotten approved through, and the consultant has worked with them.
right,
So that's probably gonna be key.
it is,
Yeah,
is.
And
Shed some light on it.
right.
one item to note too, as far as the zoning, I don't believe there's any zoning district in Bellingham that allows what would be considered a high rise, because industrial, I think the max building height is 40 feet.
Yeah,
45.
We have a height restriction
45,
on all
right.
zones.
Yeah, so.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
So that
Mm,
if we're allowed to keep our underlying zoning, then that in itself will allow us to really, keep things down under below 45 feet.
Mr. Chair, I want to pick something up on something Representative Soder said. It's something that happened at the planning board within the past month. We had an applicant in front of us in the very first meeting. Rumor in town was this area could fit high-rise buildings. Remember that? They came in asking how tall can buildings go in that area, on the Franklin, Bellingham border.
I don't recall that comment, but
People were asking that.
sure, yeah.
So, that's, it's out there in the ether, so to speak. But, people are talking high rise, and again, we have to properly educate them.
Yeah.
That's gonna be half our battle.
mhm.
I'm sorry, just trying to refresh my memory here. Similar question to, Mr. Moglia. So minimum requirement was, 15 to 18 units per acre, and then minimum lot size was 5 acres?
We have 50 acres total,
50 acres, but it can be
but we
multiple.
could put it in different areas as long as it totals that 50 acres.
But I do
So-
think there's a minimum.
There,
I thought that's
yeah,
what
there
it
is a
said.
minimum.
Was there a minimum?
I think,
Was 5, right?
mhm, yeah,
Okay, so it's
there is.
perfect, so it has to be 5 acres minimum,
for a total of the 50,
okay,
So you could
Throughout
have 10, you could have 10 5
Right.
acres,
okay.
right,
1 5, yeah, any combination.
Right.
But
we
if
can
you,
do
if you have the,
combinations.
if you have the 50 acres all stretched, and then, we can probably do the plan a little
Right.
more accordingly, and then it doesn't have to go up,
right,
okay.
right,
The number,
Right.
the target's 750.
right.
750, it
Right.
doesn't matter how,
No,
minimum 5, okay.
no.
Okay.
So that gives us some options.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Mhm.
All right, so if there's any other questions
No.
specifically to.
Thank you.
All right,
Mhm.
thank you,
Mhm.
Sergeant Petula, Chief Fitzgerald, we really appreciate you coming in tonight. And taking the time to meet with us, and it sounds like we'll probably have some more conversations in the future, so we appreciate
Thank you.
it. Now, the fire department, Chief, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in as well.
No problem. I think our counterparts, the PD, really summed it up. The easiest way to look at this, folks, from a public safety standpoint is increased population, increased demand for services. And, looking at the key word here is the cluster. So again, it's a lot in a small area. So yes, is there a 5-story height requirement, whatever the zoning happens to be? These are all things that we're gonna have to look at. So you're adding a potential, as Chief Fitzgerald said, another 2,000 people. That's more response times, that's more responses. We're seeing a 4.8% increase in call volume today with the current development that the town is experiencing. This is going to add to it as well. Again, we operate different in high-rise buildings. We don't take elevators and fire emergencies in a high-rise building or a low-rise building. For us, a low-rise building is 7 stories or less. High-rise is 7 stories or more. Excuse me. So there's multiple facets. It is going to impact us again. I think the simplest way is increased residency, increased demand for services.
And so if there was a 4 or 5-story structure that was constructed, do you have the equipment currently to even fight, fire emergencies for a structure that size? Or do you think that there would be probably a need for?
Well, there's gonna be a need for additional, we only operate right now with 6 people a shift, and I'll be very honest with you, we have 3 medicals going on right now. We have 2 mutual aid community ambulances in town right now.
Yeah.
We're maxed.
Yeah,
So we don't even have the personnel to, to handle an incident, as Chief Fitzgerald said, and Sergeant Padula, to even handle an incident as these buildings start to go up. But in the same token, I'm biased because we do receive grants from the state, as Mike sort of said. We just received 2 of them in the last 2 weeks. They don't amount to a lot, but they're in the excess of 25 to 30,000. That helps out a lot.
Yeah.
So
It's
it's a double-edged sword. It definitely
It
has.
adds up.
Absolutely. Yeah, so, as far as equipment wise, we're slowly building that. As far as personnel wise, not close. We would definitely need to revisit that. And again, I want to be careful how I say this, but maybe this is something as we continue in this, if this, happens to go forward or if it comes to light, that you build this in with the developer, whoever the developer is going to be, and say, hey, listen, part of the mitigation is you assist fire, you assist police, you assist DPW, you do certain things, stuff that hopefully we can be full thoughtful and look at.
absolutely. And I think that approach definitely is something that
Makes sense.
makes sense. Absolutely.
Watch it to town for everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you completely.
And I think that's why, in general, there's not just in our town, in other municipalities, there's an undercurrent of concern about who pays for the infrastructure upgrades, the upgrades you need to your equipment, the new staff. Because if all of these units were to get built and it was 2,000 people, that's over 10% of our current population. That's a lot, not including what's currently permitted and slated to go. So, I mean, it could be fairly impactful. Yeah. For the town.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you completely. Any questions?
I'm all set.
Okay,
We're good.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
That was a lot of very useful information tonight.
Yep.
I guess we're coming to the end of the meeting. Is there any other, I don't know if there's anything else that any of the other subcommittee members want to bring up?
No.
No, we're good. If there's any questions or comments from the public or. Okay. I don't know, Tim or Dennis, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add as well.
You heard from the experts.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think there's a lot of things that you're gonna have to take into consideration.
Yeah.
You've heard a lot of them tonight.
Yep.
A big thing is, the impact to the community, depending on where these are designated. And taking into consideration the projects that are going on right now. We have a project out back that hasn't even started, as far as and taking occupancy or anything like that, so you have this project here in the north. You have another one in the north, which is gonna be probably, I would say it's probably gonna start this year, and it's Sunken Meadows, there's 26 duplex units going in there. And you have, up on by the VFW, that 103 units, that is probably not, I don't wanna say halfway, but it's pretty close, so, taking into consideration Bungay Brook, You know, in picking areas, you know, we have these projects that are already ongoing and that are gonna generate traffic, you know, and definitely gonna be an impact along with, you know, where, whatever area you decide to put an overlay. So it's not gonna be an easy thing to do. So hopefully the consultant, helps, a little bit more in that regard and, maybe brings into brings in the other towns that are putting together packages that, you know, are gonna shed some light and help us, you know, maybe get to that point where we can make some good decisions, you know, and present it to the town.
And I think what we'll have to decide as a subcommittee is, do we want to put forth the plan that is the most dense allowed, or do we want to put forth a plan that meets the minimum requirements so we're in compliance? And I think I've heard a number of towns have come out and sort of said one way or the other. Like, I think Lexington they wanted more density or for whatever reason. And then there's other towns that have said, hey, we're submitting the bare minimum to get us over the line. So.
You know, and I think Jesse mentioned in the north, you know, we're short sewer credits in the north, but, you know, there are parcels in the north. And, you know, the onus would be on the owner to, come up with a way to develop that parcel. Just because it's designated doesn't mean it's gonna be built either, you know? You know, it's gonna be put on them to come up with whatever, treatment they would need to do, if it would be worth it for them to do it. I mean, it depends, you know, there's a lot of factors here, but it doesn't mean all of it's gonna be built either.
Yeah, and I think to that point, Tim, I know I'm more of a standpoint of, you know, not, I'd rather it not be 750 units. Obviously, you put an overlay, meet the requirements, but that would be very taxing to the town on many levels. And, you know, if we put this in the north side of Bellingham and there's no sewer allowed, so you're required to use on-site wastewater treatment, you know, that's going to limit the ability of 750 units.
Or multiple, you know what, even if it's multiple, because every parcel is gonna have, hurdles to get up on, wetlands,
Right.
you know, drainage. So you may not be able to fit that many units on one of them, which would reduce the impact to the residents, you know, as far as the morning traffic, the afternoon traffic, you know, because that's what it's gonna create.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page as far as that goes. So. All right. Anything else?
No, I think, you know, we are doing our due diligence. I think we have, we got great input from Rep. Soda and obviously Chief Surgeon. Thank you, Chief. And I think it is really eye-opening as well as DPW. So we put on all the information together once we get the consultant on board, and you know, it's probably we can have more clear idea, and maybe we might have different avenues too. So I think we go in the right direction.
Yeah, this was very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Thanks for everyone's effort. You know, it's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, to all the town staff for taking the time tonight to meet with us, we really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll keep the dialogue moving forward, because this is gonna be a little bit of a long journey, so. With that being said, I think next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from February 8th.
I'll make the motion before the minutes is ready.
Hold on a minute.
Okay.
Got a comment. For that, I don't believe Jeff is here,
He was.
so that just needs to get
Yep.
removed.
So what we doing? I missed it.
Oh,
Take
Jeff
Jeff
was
off.
not here.
So I just, that needs to get removed from the
Okay,
minutes, but
perfect.
that's the only comment I have.
Yep,
Okay.
got it.
Alright. Now, entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second, sorry.
All right, motion by Bill, seconded by Sahani and Liz. So roll call.
Aye. All aye.
Rob, Lucier, aye.
Is I.
Sanjay and I.
Right, And that passes.
Do we want to talk about our next meeting?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Give me my marching orders.
That's right, 'cause we don't have a date yet, do we?
Well, we were thinking the 29th, but then
Will we have anything for next week, though?
I don't know if we're gonna have the consultants' things ready.
Yeah, let's give.
I
them
don't
some
know.
time.
I think I'm okay with the 7th, and
Seventh, I might be, yep, I'm okay with the seventh too. As long as everyone is,
I'm also available.
That should be fun.
Okay,
Okay.
so are we thinking 5:30?
that would be fantastic. for me.
okay, because I know we can do that, yeah. Because I feel like if the consultant's ready, we'll need the full hour and a
Yep.
half
Yep,
to kind of talk with them.
Okay,
before
Yeah.
your meeting.
okay.
Yeah.
We won't have one then.
Oh, you won't have
Okay.
one that night?
No.
Well, 5:30.
It would be zoning, the zoning board would have one that night, but it's at 7. We'll be done anyway before
Okay.
7.
Yeah.
The thought is, what else would you like me to try to gather for that meeting? Is there anything in particular you want me to try to, I know that we wanted the school. Is that something you want them to be here, or do you want a written statement, or where are your thoughts? with
However
the
it works,
school?
if there's data that they have,
Just some
or,
data?
yeah, or
Okay.
if they wanna, if the superintendent wants to come,
Okay,
or a representative, that would be great
Okay.
too. The other thing is, if we are going to be doing 1 or 2 public meetings,
Mhm.
regardless of what the forum is, we should probably think about dates
okay.
and time. So Amy, I don't know if you wanna come with some like
Mhm.
weekday, night times, or even like a Saturday. I mean, I can make.
May I make a comment on that? Can we get the consultant in first and then
Sure.
let's
Oh,
put up-
yeah,
let's get out all the
Good idea.
information correctly, and then, as I said,
Good idea.
I don't think it will be a premature, it's, to open it up,
Yeah.
because we don't even have all the answers yet,
Mhm, mhm.
and, it's,
Mhm.
it's my,
I think that's a great
yeah, so we
suggestion.
can start thinking about it after
Yeah.
we hear from the
Right.
consultant on the
That's
7th.
a great suggestion. I'm almost thinking too, and obviously once the consultant comes, but I'd love to have like a liaison, maybe have a parent that's the liaison with the school committee. Have a liaison for the senior center. They will, inform the senior. I'd like to try to do that with as many different groups that we can to get the word out there as part of the outreach, which we can talk with the consultant about, but
Yeah.
having, a couple key people that, work with these groups within the community to give them that accurate information. It would be really helpful if, we can somehow figure out how to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of comments. What I think we want to do is once we identify those liaisons, invite them to a meeting with the consultant
Yes.
so they can be educated before we do the outreach.
Mhm.
I also think we're targeting November for a town. meeting. I don't think we want to have much outreach prior to the next town. I don't want to confuse people,
Mhm.
educate them too early and or before the election in June. So I think we want to probably have our educational programs implemented potentially after June, during the summer, with a lot more focus in September and October, once it gets more refined. The earlier we do it, people will lose interest, they'll forget about things, and we may refine things even further based on what other towns are doing.
Mhm.
The only thing about the summer is, do people really pay attention?
That's why.
I-
September.
Yeah, I'm just concerned, I see where you're coming from, but I'm concerned people will be in vacation mode until September. And by September, it might be a little too late, so I think all good thoughts to put down, Amy, and ask the consultant on the 7th.
Yeah,
What's the best course of action? What have you seen work best?
Mhm.
Should we wait until after the election, et cetera? So I think good questions to ask, though.
I mean, it's, I think that relatively, it's our town is, most of the people, because of the school schedule, everybody's pretty much back in town. I will say the last week of August,
Mhm.
Yeah,
most of the time. And then, and everybody will be full available maybe right before the school open, and then maybe a few weeks after.
Mhm.
So if we say that, maybe like the 3rd or 4th week of August, and then
Mhm.
another one will be maybe September,
Mhm.
like a month after. And
And
then,
I also think we need to start putting in place a mechanism to reach out to, we heard what Representative Soto offered. To reach out to his office and all the departments to find out what, the grant numbers have been from the state currently and what could be anticipated down the road. And start to, that's gonna be a huge figure as we develop this. So that people know what the impact is.
Mhm,
Excuse me.
mhm.
Besides the large numbers, like little things are like the chief was mentioning that, everything is pretty much tied into
Mhm,
all together, you got
mhm,
20 here, 30 here, 40 here, and then you got a 5 mil here, it's a $10 million here, everything is all connected.
mhm.
It's, it's a double-edged sword. I don't think, we're gonna win that, so I'm kind of with, Rep Sorter on that, it's, just, I think, we need to give that information out there.
There is a lot
Yeah.
at stake.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Tremendous.
Yep.
One of the biggest decisions this town's faced.
You know, and that's another thing we can think about is, maybe at town meeting, we have some of these departments. You hate to do it at a town meeting, maybe that's not protocol, but, really explaining to the people that maybe didn't get educated on this, the impacts. I don't know if that's the place or if we have a flyer or something, but when you hear from the staff, the impact on this, it hits you where you need to go for that vote. And, it's not a 2/3. This is, they had changed it. It's a majority. So it just needs to pass by one or, which those rules had changed. So, it could be beneficial to have the DPW give a quick 5-minute police, fire.
Even the library.
Even the
and, I'm sure the
library.
Library has a lot of grant money
Right.
Yeah.
tied up.
Because they're the people that work here that see, and a lot of them do live here as well.
Once we have all the info, I think, each department, we can,
Mhm.
each department has, I think, social media,
Yes.
page. We can start the,
Yes.
putting the information out there so
Mhm.
everybody can reach out that way as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think you've got enough to do between now and March 7th, Amy.
If it was enough for you.
Yeah.
We're here to help,
Okay.
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep, definitely. All right,
Okay.
so I think we've exhausted our agenda. With that, just thank you again to town staff.
Absolutely.
and to
Thank
the,
you.
The
Thank
public
you.
that's here, really appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
out. With that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right, we'll call a vote.
Bill McCall, yes.
Rob, aye.
Liz, aye.
Tom and I.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.